Have you ever been given a gift and then seen it destroyed? For example, let's say that someone gives you a beautiful yacht. It looks amazing and has every amenity you could ever wish for, but then you take it out one day to sea, go home, and then when you come back, it's been painted green and has a creepy clown statue turned into the figurehead. When you ask why the person who gave you the yacht would do this to your beautiful boat, you're told in response, "Well, I think it looks better this way." Now imagine that yacht is a superhero TV show, and that it was created by a pair of people who are behind two of the greatest comic book movies of all time. So what was that TV show? Well, it was called MANTIS. And who were its two creators? Sam Raimi and Sam Hamm. Yes, the director behind the first blockbuster Spider-Man movie and the screenwriter who originated the script for the 1989 Batman movie. It should be a no-brainer that this show would turn out to be a hit, right? Well, let us find out what went wrong as we look into one of the biggest examples of a network chickening out in television history in this episode of Gone, But Not Forgotten.
Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the Store tab on any of our JoBlo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some.
The origins of the Mantis character are a bit sketchy. All we know for sure is that in 1993, Fox would approach Sam Raimi and Sam Hamm with a request to create a superhero show. A TV movie/pilot was commissioned, and the script was finished and put into production. The lead of this TV movie would be Carl Lumbly, who portrayed Dr. Miles Hawkins, aka Mantis. Miles was a genius who had been judgmental towards the poor black community, feeling little to no empathy for their suffering. This would all change when Hawkins would be paralyzed during a riot and discovered that a police officer was the one who shot him in the back. He tries to sue the city for this, but loses, giving him a dose of reality that the system is not as perfect as he thought. Racked with guilt for his arrogant and dismissive behavior towards those less fortunate than him, Miles creates a suit that gives him the ability to walk again. He also creates a powerful tranquilizer dart that freezes its victims. Plus, he came up with one of the coolest superhero vehicles I have ever seen. It was like a cross between the Batmobile and the Batwing that could transform and morph into other vehicles. Carl Lumbly is an incredible actor with an extensive career that dates all the way back to the early 1980s. One of his most memorable roles at the time was in the cult film The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. Since Mantis, Lumbly has had a long career in film and television. I became a huge fan of him through Alias, and he was amazing in Netflix's House of Usher. Carl was impressed by the script for Mantis, and I can understand why. This pilot TV movie was truly ahead of its time. It would revolve around a TV reporter named Yuri Barnes, played by Bobby Hosea, and pathologist Dr. Amy Ellis, played by the stunning Gina Torres. By the way, am I the only one who thinks that Gina Torres just gets more beautiful as the years go by? Anyway, the rest of the cast was Steve James as a handsome inner-city youth club manager named Antoine Pike, and Miles' protégés played by Wendy Raquel Robinson and Christopher M. Brown. As you can tell, this show featured a main cast of people of color. This was something that had never been done before. The pilot would deal with such subjects as racism, class divisions, and police corruption, subjects that weren't in superhero films or TV at the time. Sure, the '89 Batman movie did show a little bit of police corruption with the character of Lieutenant Max Eckhart, but that wasn't something that was delved into that deep in the movie. One thing that was really surprising to me was how well this script was written. In the TV movie, Dr. Ellis is trying to figure out who Mantis is. The character of Antoine Pike was introduced as a red herring, but the trope would end up being done really well. At first glance, Pike is who you think a superhero would be. He's admired by his community, has excellent fighting skills, and defends Ellis from criminals. On the flip side, Hawkins is aloof and helps the police even when Ellis points out how the chief of police will only use it to give law enforcement more power that borders on martial law. Miles is also in a wheelchair, and even before he was paralyzed, he was an intellectual and not a fighter, so it's totally believable that Amy would overlook him. All the actors got to stretch their talent on this show by playing multifaceted characters. Amy was smart and hardworking, yet was still being talked down to by her superiors. Yuri is talented and a tenacious reporter, but his obsession with his career causes his personal life to suffer. The TV movie went against many of the stereotypes that people of color have. Even though the episode featured street gangs, the actors didn't go over the top with their performances. The police chief tries to manipulate them into getting into a gang war, but instead of immediately going to war, they meet up to try to hash out the situation. Sure, it begins to go bad, but Mantis is able to point out how they're being manipulated. The twist at the end of the pilot is that Pike is really working with the corrupt chief of police, Frank Stark, but Stark is assassinated before he can confess to his crimes. So we're left with a setup for a series dealing with a police conspiracy and a determined Mantis with a mission to uncover it. It's also implied that this conspiracy may also have a connection to his shooting. This TV movie was a rating smash and was praised for its focus not only on its excellent action and special effects, but also on its non-white cast. So the network would commission the show and then change everything that made this TV movie stand out. But what network would be stupid enough to take everything that made this show a success and completely chuck it? Well... Yes, you fans of Gone But Not Forgotten shouldn't be surprised to learn that the Fox network was behind the downfall of Mantis. Seriously, I don't have a vendetta against these guys, but it seems like the folks over at Fox Original Programming seem to live in bizarro world. Just look at their canceled shows that I've written about in the past. Sliders, Briscoe County Jr., Dollhouse, Space Above and Beyond, and Dark Angel have all met the death of insane decisions by Fox executives. And I haven't even talked about such shows as Firefly, Wonder Falls, Strange Luck, Kindred the Embraced, or my personal favorite, Prophet. There's just so many shows that they've screwed up that I can make a year of episodes out of, and still not scratch the surface. Like I said, this show was completely gutted when it got the green light to series. The police corruption angle was pretty much scrapped, and worst of all, the entire cast was removed and replaced by a mostly white cast, with Carl Lumbly being the only survivor of the purge. At the time, Fox said that the reason for the change was that they thought it was too edgy and dark, but many in the media would accuse the network of whitewashing. In an interview on the Comic Book Central podcast, Carl Lumbly would explain this in detail.
I think that, Fox had been very, very brave in doing the pilot. I think that the results normally would have resulted in the pilot being advanced and not changed. But I think for whatever reasons, the fear, and perhaps because it was unusual, and because it did deal with so many things, I think, people maybe lost heart. And so in my mind, the pilot was sort of deconstructed and reconstructed in a more traditionally palatable format. It was so far ahead of its time that one of the reviewers that struck me the most in taking issue with the pilot, he could accept, the development of the suit. He could accept the chrysalid. What he couldn't accept was the idea that there was a black man who was a physicist and the CEO of his own company. And literally, that was his largest point of contention. So I think there was an awful lot that had to be overcome, and Fox might have grown a little faint-hearted in being willing to tackle all of that.
Years later, Gina Torres would talk about Mantis herself and say, quote, "The show stands as a huge lesson for me on how many different ways the entertainment industry was and is so unapologetically biased against people of color. The experience of their time on Mantis would bond both Lumbly and Torres, who are still friends to this day and would years later work together again on Alias. Both Rammi and Hamm would disown the show. Even though they were listed as producers, they would have no involvement in the series. The look of Mantis was also changed from a Darkman-inspired suit and mask to a more traditional superhero costume. After watching both the pilot and the series, I think they both have their pluses and minuses. I like the suit aspect of the costume, but I would also like to have seen a bit more of his head covered. I mean, you can plainly see that it's him. The suit in the series would also have a cool exoskeleton, but the detail was lost due to the lack of colors on the costume. The new characters that took center stage were Miles' best friend and business partner John Stonebreak, played by the late Roger Rees. Many of you will recognize him from either Cheers or as the slimy sheriff of Nottingham in Mel Brooks' classic Robin Hood, M.A.N.T.I.S. The other character, and the most annoying one on the show, was the streetwise bike messenger Taylor Savage, played by Christopher Garton. Garton has been on many TV shows and movies, one of the most famous being in Tremors 2, Aftershocks. Miles' love interest, Lieutenant Leora Maxwell, would be played by Galen George, who after Mantis would have many small roles in TV and film before tragically dying of cancer in July 2020. Now, the pilot for the actual Mantis series was a joke. The introduction of Taylor Savage is a perfect example of how dumb the show was. If any of you out there grew up in the 90s, you know all about the extreme fad that was huge at the time. Extreme sports, extreme comics, hell, even extreme Capri Sun. Taylor is the typical example of this stupid cultural moment from the mid-90s, such as in this amusingly stupid scene.
Hey!
I almost died. The new pilot would also change Miles into a reluctant hero. He's introduced as a brilliant inventor who's almost a recluse. With his partner John Stonebreak, the two of them create a suit that lets Miles walk, but also gives him super strength and reflexes. While he's playing basketball in this suit, and no, I'm not joking, one of the first things Miles does as Mantis is to play basketball with his buddy, he then stops two goons who attack Savage and try to assault a girl. The next day, Savage tells his friends about what he saw.
With the legs, the praying mantis. Yes, that's what it was.
I'm sorry, what did you just say? So you think that this looks exactly like this? Anyway, it's Savage who comes up with the idea of turning Miles into a superhero, after Miles foils a former business partner from selling a biological weapon. This was a real betrayal for this character. The whole motivation of guilt for his views of other people, and choosing to make a difference when he was paralyzed or otherwise give up, was completely gone. Now he was just watered down. In the TV movie pilot, he's a genius and a mentor to other scientists, but now he needed a friend to help create the Mantis' weapons and vehicles. The first part of the season would deal with Mantis stopping organized crimes, mostly dumb criminals, such as in the second episode where Miles deals with a group of mercenaries.
You don't like me much, do you?
No.
Wow, someone is insecure. The only memorable villain for the first part of the season was Miles' former business partner, Solomon Box, who is behind the police corruption and Hawkins being shot. In the first episode, he was played by Brian James, a character actor legend who many people know for his roles in Blade Runner and The Fifth Element. But then he was recast by Garrick himself, Andrew Robinson, who seemed to relish this role. But predictably, the ratings would begin to tank. So the network decided they had to change the direction of the series yet again, and would return to what would make the show great. They brought back the original cast and went back to exploring such adult themes as racism and class division. Ha ha ha, I'm just kidding. No, they just decided to make some episodes about parallel universes, alternate futures, fish people, evil clones, and the Men in Black. You know, average stories that are written by people with the attention span of a hummingbird on crack. Thankfully, the show would be put out of its misery, and the final episode is so weird that people have been talking about this one for decades. The finale, titled Ghost of the Ice, was about Mantis and Stonebreak crashing into the wilderness and being chased by, I can't believe I'm going to say this, an invisible dinosaur. Yep, You heard that right. In the last episode, Mantis gets chased by an invisible T-Rex. Oh, and even better, it kills him. Yes, a giant invisible lizard kills the main character of the show. That's it. Dead. No possible alternate universe, no possibility for time travel to save him. He's just dead. Even if you like the show, and if you do, well, you have acquired taste, so good for you, that episode was simply a middle finger to its dedicated viewers. This is why Mantis is probably the perfect example of network interference tanking a show and then blaming everyone but themselves. And that's a shame because it was a truly groundbreaking concept. The first black superhero on TV. It could have been great, but fear would end up derailing it. So should Mantis come back? Well, yes and no. Yes, if it's like the TV movie, and a big old no if it's like the TV show. I would love to see the relevant themes that Rammi and Hamm wrote about be adapted into a new TV show, or maybe a movie. Carl Lumbly said he's up for it, but I doubt there are enough people out there who are demanding a return of Mantis. If you're interested in watching the series, it's now available to buy from Amazon, and someone uploaded the original TV movie pilot on YouTube. So if you're interested in getting into a flying submarine and looking for some bad guys to take down, then maybe think about giving Mantis a shot. Just watch out for invisible dinosaurs. Jesus, this was a stupid show. I'm Jesse Shade speaking on behalf of David Arroyo for JoBlo.com, and thanks again for watching our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe to the JoBlo Originals channel. Tell all your friends who like this sort of content, and turn on the bell to receive notifications for all our latest videos. We are an independent company that appreciates all of your support, and we will see you next time for the next episode of Gone, But Not Forgotten.